We're about to dive deep into a profound precept from the scriptures, the idea that Jehovah often reveals the deepest wisdom not when we're striving with our minds, but when we've totally surrendered in sleep. We're going to investigate these sealed instructions that, you'll see, can only be opened when our own efforts completely stop.
Just let that sink in for a second. We are taught our whole lives to seek, to study, to reason our way to truth. But what if the very act of trying is the barrier itself? Could it be that real revelation only shows up when we finally stop searching and just listen? Let's walk down this unorthodox path to wisdom together.
Okay, so first things first, we have to understand why this path is so unusual, so counterintuitive. The scriptures lay out a fundamental legal barrier between the mind of man and the spirit of Jehovah. Let's really look at why our intellect, all on its own, is just not equipped for this kind of mission. This precept from 1 Corinthians 2:14 establishes a non-negotiable rule. The natural man, that is, anyone relying solely on human logic and reasoning, is operating in a completely different jurisdiction. He literally cannot process spiritual truth because it requires a different kind of perception. You know, it's like trying to see color with your ears. You're just using the wrong tool for the job. And here we can see the two states, side by side. On the left, you've got the natural man armed with his effort and his reasoning. And on the right, you had the path of spiritual discernment, which, you'll notice, requires surrender. The key takeaway is this: you cannot force a spiritual lock with a carnal key. The tools you see on the left will never, ever open the treasures waiting on the right. But what happens when we ignore this rule? What happens when we try to force that lock anyway? Well, the source material gives us this incredibly powerful parable that shows the destructive, frankly, results of applying our own strength to the things of Jehovah.
So the parable begins. You have a scholar, right? He represents the peak of human intellect, and he's facing these sealed tablets, which represent divine mysteries. His goal is to break the seals, get the wisdom. But as we're about to see, his method is the entire problem.
So look at the scholar's tools, a hammer and a chisel. These represent his own effort, his logic, his reasoning. But with every single blow, he doesn't reveal wisdom. He cracks the very tablets that hold it. His strength didn't lead to revelation. It nearly led to the complete destruction of the prize he was after. And right here, this is the turning point. After all his striving, all his effort fails him, he collapses. He's exhausted, and he falls into a deep sleep. Now, this moment of total surrender, it's not just an admission of failure. It is the absolute necessary prerequisite for the real breakthrough. You see, the scholar's failure actually reveals the answer. The path to the wisdom of Jehovah isn't a conquest you fight with your intellect. It's a surrender of your will. Now, before this kind of wisdom can be received, a very specific offering is required. The sources call it accepted first fruits. And this isn't some physical gift. No, it's the spiritual act of radical surrender and brutally honest self-examination. It's the act of emptying yourself to make room for what Jehovah is about to provide. It is absolutely crucial to understand that not all sleep is the same. The scholar's rest was a sleep of surrender, which is born from faith and trust. This is a receptive state, a position you take to be ready for impartation. It is the polar opposite of a sleep of slothfulness, which comes from neglect and leads only to spiritual poverty. One is an act of trust, the other is an act of negligence. Okay, so once the heart is in this state of surrender, what actually happens? What does this moment of impartation look like? Let's get into it. While he's in that sleep of surrender, the scholar finally receives the answer. And get this, the seals weren't broken by his hammer at all. They were dissolved by the sacrificial blood of the Lamb. The solution was never his strength, but the power of a sacrifice that he could only accept through surrender. And this right here is the essence of what the source calls sleep wisdom. It's this fusion of that surrendered rest with a spiritual understanding that is directly imparted from Jehovah. And the critical point is this: this wisdom isn't learned through study, it's received as a gift. I mean, think about how the prophet Esdras describes this process in 2 Esdras 14:39. He talks about drinking a fiery cup, the glory of light. And afterwards, his heart didn't just know things, it uttered understanding. Wisdom grew within him. This shows you it's a total internal transformation, not just learning some external facts. Now, to help us really get our minds around these ideas, the source material actually provides a whole new vocabulary. These are terms that fuse different concepts together to describe this unique process of surrender and reception. This table lays it all out, this new language of surrender. Notice terms like sleep wisdom, which combines rest with understanding, or surrender impartation, linking our act of yielding with Jehovah's act of giving. Each of these terms defines a very specific spiritual function that operates way outside our normal human understanding. And this all leads to a really powerful call to action. We are instructed to completely reframe how we view sleep itself. It's not just a biological need. It is an appointed time for communication with Jehovah, a sacred opportunity to silence our own intellect and receive what can never be earned by effort. And so we end right where we began, with a question that now carries so much more weight. If receiving true wisdom requires the total shutdown of our own striving, then maybe, just maybe, the most profound act of faith we can perform each day is to simply surrender to sleep, trusting that Jehovah speaks most clearly when we are finally silent. Peace be unto you.